Hey guys, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome. Today, I'll be sharing the books that I read in January. So January was a great reading month for me. I read 16 books, which is awesome. So I'm going to talk about them today. So without further ado, let's just get right into the wrap up. I'll be sharing these in the order that I read them. So the first book that I read or finished in January was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang or Huang. I was watching one video where this book was mentioned and the person pronounced her last name as Huang, I think, so I think it's Helen Huang. I'm not sure. I think it's that. Anyway, this is an adult book about a girl, or not a girl, a woman who has problems with relationships. She wants to get in a relationship, but she has a problem with intimacy since she is autistic, so being intimate with someone is not something that she's always comfortable with. What she does is she hires an escort named Michael, and she hires him to teach her basically how to have sex and how to be intimate with a guy. And throughout his time teaching her how to be social and how to have a boyfriend and how to be intimate, they start to grow some feelings for each other. This book is one of the cutest books I have ever read. I loved it. I had been hearing about this book so much. It won Best Romance of 2018 on Goodreads, so for that reason I knew I had to pick it up because I love romance books, and it did not disappoint. It definitely lives up to the hype. Stella and Michael's relationship is so adorable. They are so cute together. They just have so much chemistry together. I love how innocent the relationship seems, even though Michael is an escort, so he shouldn't be innocent, but he comes across that way. He comes across so sweet and just so caring. He truly cares for Stella and really finds her just as such a precious thing, and it really shows how much he cares for her in this book. He goes out of his way to make her feel comfortable while he is teaching her how to be intimate. Seeing their relationship develop was so amazing. You really get to see them go from kind of being uncomfortable with each other since they are at the beginning to them just falling in love gradually, and it was so beautiful to see. Another thing I loved about this book is how this book portrayed autism. I had never read a book that had a character who was autistic. Stella has very mild autism, but there are some things about her that she does struggle with. She struggles with being intimate, of course, and that's why she hires Michael to teach her how to be intimate with a partner. Overall, this was a 5 out of 5 star book for me. I would recommend it if you are into romance books. This romance was so sweet, and the sexy times were very steamy. I love them, so I would highly recommend this one. And then we went from a book that I love to a book that I hate with every fiber of my being. So, probably wondering what that book is. That is After by Anna Todd. The word hate for this book is an understatement. I despise this book. Okay, so this book has been getting a lot of buzz recently because the movie for it is coming out this year, so most of you might know what it's about, but I will give you a summary if there is even a summary to tell. It is a book about this girl who starts college and she meets this guy there who is kind of like a punk, and she falls in love with him, and the plot is them fighting, getting back together, fighting, getting back together, rinse and repeat. That seriously is the plot. I hate this book. Oh my god. There are so many reasons that I hate this book that I don't want to mention them all in just a wrap up, but the review for this book should be uploaded by now. I'm actually pretty sure it is. So I will link my review on the screen so you can find out all the reasons why I hated this book. Just a quick rundown of why I hated it. Abuse was glorified. The main character was a bitch. She was not likable at all. There was cheating in this book, which I did not appreciate. The writing sucked. There's so many more things that I hated. Those are the main 4, though. Honestly, just stay away from this book if you haven't read it yet. It was just really bad. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Actually, I would give it 0 stars if Goodreads allowed you to give 0 stars. This is a 0-star book. There was nothing good about it. Again, I hated the main character. She is the worst heroine I have ever read. She is a stuck-up bitch, selfish, thinks she's entitled, thinks she's better than everyone. When you're supposed to like her in this book, and the way she's written is in a way that you're supposed to like her, but she is so judgmental that the book fails to make me like the main character. She slut-shames so much. Ridiculous amount of slut-shaming that she does. She's just terrible, and I hated the abuse. I hated how the abuse was glorified in this book, how it was romanticized, how it was made to seem like something desirable. Hated it. So that's all I'm going to say on this one, because I did do a full review on it. Overall though, I hated it so much, and it so far is the worst book that I have read this year. Okay, let's move on to a book that I actually did love. So that one is, I have it right here, and that is Origin by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the bind-up of Opal and Origin. Origin is the 4th book, and I was so happy to finally get back into this series because it had been a while since I had jumped back into it. So I finally did, and I finally finished off this series in January, and it was amazing. I love this series so much. Origin was really good. Really good. The only problem I kind of had with it is that the 2 love interests or main characters were separated, and I really hate that trope where the 2 love interests are separated for like half or all of the book. It drives me crazy because I want to see my couples together. I still want to see their romance develop. So when they are separated, it just irks me so bad. That is one reason why I really don't like New Moon from the Twilight series, because Edward and Bella are separated throughout the whole book, and it infuriated me. So that's the only problem I had with Origin, but they don't stay separated forever, so I appreciated that. And I loved how action-packed Origin was. I think it is the most intense book out of this series. So much happens. So many people die. So many people die. Oh my gosh, which I didn't expect so much death in this series, but it does happen. So I really enjoyed Origin. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, of course. And the next book in this series, the last book, was even better. And to add to Origin, I might as well talk about the last book in this series, because I also read this one in January too. And this is actually my favorite book in the whole series. Oh my god, it was so action-packed, so much went down. The finale was amazing. How everything was resolved, how the series was wrapped up. It was wrapped up so nicely, which I appreciated, because there's nothing worse in the last book of a series than it to feel like nothing happened or nothing was clearly resolved, or there's still so many questions that are left unanswered. But this book really wrapped up the series nicely. There were so many relationships in this book that I really loved seeing develop. So many new relationships, so many new characters that are introduced, and the epilogue just had my heart just soaring. Loved it, and it did not disappoint. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was a reread, and that was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. It had been years since I reread The Hunger Games. I think the last time I picked up this book was in middle school or maybe early high school. Somewhere around there, which was about 5 or 6 years ago. So that was a long time ago that I read these books. And I was curious to see if I liked them as much as I did when I was a teenager. That didn't turn out to be the case, which is something that I kind of expected, because since I have read The Hunger Games, I have read so many other books that I actually do love more than The Hunger Games, that I had a feeling that I wasn't going to love it as much. But I still love this series. I still felt so nostalgic reading it. I'm not even going to explain what this series is about, because honestly, you should know. This is only like the most popular trilogy dystopian series of all time, so you should know. But I got a kick out of reading it again. In fact, I do want to do a review on this series, just because it's such an iconic series that I want to do a review and discussion on it. Even though it's such an old series, I still want to do that. I gave The Hunger Games 4 stars, so I still really enjoyed it. I also got to the rest of the books in this series, which is Catching Fire and Mockingjay. I don't have the first book yet, but I need to do that. I got these at a thrift store, so I just kind of picked them up randomly, but they didn't have the Hunger Games, which really irked me, so I need to get the Hunger Games sometime. But I did finish this series, so I can do a review on it soon. Out of all the books in this series, Catching Fire is definitely my favorite. So much awesome stuff happens in Catching Fire. The arena in this book is so cool and so much more complex than the one in the Hunger Games. So many cool characters are introduced. Finnick is introduced in this book, and I love Finnick to death. Love him so much. So I definitely do like Catching Fire more than the Hunger Games or Mockingjay. In fact, this is how a lot of people feel about Mockingjay, and I feel the same. Mockingjay is the worst book in the series. It drags on a lot, and especially in the beginning, there's so much about the beginning that I just don't like. I don't like how slow it is. The book only picks up in the latter part of the book, but the beginning was just so boring, and that's something that I did remember about Mockingjay that I didn't like. So Mockingjay is the worst book in the series to me, but nonetheless I still gave it a 4-star, and I gave Catching Fire a 4-star. All of these books are 4-star reads to me, so I enjoy them. No longer think that they are the best books I have ever read. When I was a teenager, I was obsessed with them, and I thought they were the best books ever. No book could top them, but now I'm like, they're fine. I enjoy them, but they're not the best anymore. However, if you have not read this series, I would still recommend it because, yeah, they are action-packed, they are fun, the romance is really sweet. So yeah, enjoy this series. Love it. I will probably reread it again multiple times. And then I read the last 2 books in the Royal series by Aaron Watt, which is Fallen Heir and Cracked Kingdom. The last 2 books in the series follow different characters than the first 3 books in this series. This one follows Easton, which is one of the brothers. And if you don't know, the first book is about this girl who is struggling, and she is very poor, and she ends up becoming a stripper, but this guy comes and propositions her to live with him. He's very rich, so she is thrust into this world of like riches when she came from a very poor background, and she also gets involved and meets this guy's sons, and she starts a relationship with one of the sons. So this series is a lot about these brothers and their hardships and how hard their lives are and how toxic they are and all of the crazy stuff that they go through. And so in the last 2 books we follow Easton, who is actually my favorite brother out of all the brothers. I love him so much, and when I found out he was getting like his own 2 books, I was so happy because I love him so much. So Easton meets this girl named Hartley who is kind of difficult. Easton is someone who can get any girl he wants. Like, all the girls like throw themselves on him, but Hartley doesn't. She's kind of sees Easton for the, I would say, kind of douchebag that he is. She knows his ways right off the bat, and so Easton kind of sees her as a challenge. So it's all about him trying to get into her pants, but eventually he does actually form true feelings for her, and Easton is someone who never falls in love. He never has any true feelings for a girl. He just wants to hook up with them, but he sees Hartley as someone that he actually wants a true relationship with. So that sounds like a very basic new adult plotline, which it is. I mean, it's the trope of the guy who is a player and he meets this girl who sees him for his bullshit and he sees her as a challenge, so he tries to get with her. Like, that is a very, very popular trope in new adult fiction, but I liked how this book handled that trope. Because I already liked Easton so much from the previous books, I didn't mind seeing him as someone who is kind of a douchebag at all. Like, I still really enjoyed his character in these 2 books. Fallen Heir was great. I loved seeing his relationship with Hartley develop and how Hartley came to find out that Easton isn't all of what he seems. He kind of puts on a front as a player, but deep down he has so much about him that is really sweet, and he had a very heartbreaking life. And she kind of comes to discover that and kind of comes to understand why he is the way he is. And after that fact, we really get to see their relationship develop, which I enjoyed seeing. And then in Cracked Kingdom, this is the last book, sadly, in this series, because I love this series so much, but this is the last book in this series, and it's my least favorite book in this series. The only reason is that this book follows a trope that I really don't like, and I'm not going to mention it because it is kind of a spoiler. It's a trope that I like when it's used well, but in this book it felt so forced, and I didn't like that at all, and it kind of ruined Easton and Hartley's relationship and kind of put the relationship at a standstill when their romance had been developing so much, and then in this book it's kind of drops off, and I was really disappointed in that. So I'm going to leave it at that, leave it very vague so I don't spoil you, but yeah, I didn't like Cracked Kingdom as much. Also, there's a plot twist in this book that was a great plot twist, but the plot twist affected something that had happened in the beginning of the book that wasn't addressed, and it was such an important detail that the fact that it wasn't addressed was just very weird. Again, I can't say what it is because it's a spoiler, but I just hated how it wasn't addressed by these 2 characters, that it was like, oh my god, we did this when we shouldn't have done this. Like, this plot twist changes everything, but that wasn't brought up. I just found that so weird, and I wish it would have been brought up because it would have created such angst and drama, but it just wasn't, and I found that really strange. So that was kind of disappointing because I'm like, this was such an important detail that the authors didn't include, and it seemed weird. Again, I can't mention what it is, and I wish I could because I don't want to spoil you guys, but I am going to talk about what that is when I do my review of this series and my discussion of it, so I will talk about it in that video when that comes out. But yeah, Cracked Kingdom I gave a 4 stars. Definitely my least favorite book in the series. Next, I read Obsession by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a spin-off book of the Lux series that follows the villain aliens, which was super interesting. This book is about Hunter, who is an Arum, and the Luxen in this series are the good aliens, and the Arum are the bad ones. So we follow one of the villains of this universe, and in this book, he gets tasked with watching over this human who had heard secondhand that these aliens exist, and no one is supposed to know that Arum and Luxen exist in this world. And that puts her in danger of her being harmed by the Luxen because she knows too much. So Hunter is tasked with watching Serena, this girl, and being her bodyguard pretty much, and things start to develop between them. They kind of start off as enemies, but they grow to like each other, so it kind of follows the enemies to lovers trope, which is a trope that I adore. I loved Obsession. Oh my god, Hunter. Loved him so much. I really liked him in Origin. He was brought up in Origin very briefly, but I was like, ooh, I like this guy. So when he got his own book, I was like, yes, I want to read more about him. He was super interesting, and one thing that this book did was it showed another side of the feud between the Luxen and the Arum that I didn't know. It actually brought up the Arum side of the story, and it made the Arum seem like they aren't as bad as they are portrayed in the Lux series, which was so eye-opening, and it really proves that there are 2 sides to every story. In the Lux series, we only know the Luxen side of the story, and they just see the Arum as just terrible people. But in reality, in Obsession, the Arum are seen as people who are justified for what they did. So that was really intriguing. It really brought some light on the Arum and made them not seem as bad as they seem in the Lux series, which was really, really cool. Another thing I loved was the romance. This book was so steamy. The Lux series is YA, but Obsession is definitely new adult. So if you are a young person who loves the Lux series and wants to read Obsession, just keep that in mind that Obsession is classified as a new adult. There are some explicit scenes in there, which is something that should come with a warning because the Lux series is meant for teenagers, but Obsession is more meant for people in their 20s and adults, so just keep that in mind. But I loved Serena and Hunter's relationship, how it developed, how much Hunter came to care for this human when he is someone who really does not love humans at all. He finds them very annoying, but he comes to really like and in turn love Serena, which was so amazing. So I loved Obsession. The only thing I hate about this book is the cover. This cover is really, really, really bad. But despite that fact, the book itself, what's inside, was amazing. And I loved it so much, and I'm glad that I read it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then I started a new series. I read the first 2 books in this series, and also 2 books that are from a new to me author. And I found that I really love this author's work based on these 2 books, and I'm excited to read more from her. And that is The Opportunist by Taryn Fisher. This is a series that I had never heard about before, so I just kind of found it out on my own, and I really enjoyed it. The first book, The Opportunist, is about this girl who reunites with her ex-boyfriend, and her ex-boyfriend has amnesia. So he does not remember her at all. And the way that these 2 broke up was very, very bad. They had a really bad breakup. The main character had done so many things to the guy with amnesia that were really, really bad. So she finds this as an opportunity to get back with him because he doesn't remember her. He doesn't remember the bad things that she did to him. And she wants to get back to him. She missed him so much. So she takes this opportunity to start the relationship anew since he doesn't remember her. When I read the premise of this book, I was like, this sounds so interesting. Like, if someone you had been involved with got amnesia and doesn't remember you at all, does not remember the bad things that you did to them, and you want them back, like, would you take the opportunity to be someone new for them because they don't remember you? Would you try to get them back and start a new relationship with them? Like, doesn't that just sound so interesting? So I wanted to see how this book played out that scenario, and it was done pretty well. What I found the most fascinating about this book is the main character. She is clearly someone who is very morally gray. She has done so many bad things to the guy in this book, so many just irredeemable things that you should hate her, but you kind of come to understand her. You understand why she did the things that she did, so she kind of comes across as redeemable in this book. And that's a reason why I do like unlikable characters that are portrayed as people who are supposed to be unlikable, not people like Tessa and After who you're supposed to like them, but the author makes them seem like terrible people, but they want you to like them. The Opportunist series portrays unlikable characters in a way that the author recognizes that they are terrible people, and the terrible things that they do are not romanticized, which I appreciate. I gave The Opportunist 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't the most amazing book ever, but it was definitely really interesting and taught me a lot of lessons when it comes to loving someone. One thing that this series brings out that I found really fascinating, and it is something I never thought about before, it is that you never really stop loving someone, no matter if you break up with them. If you have already, like, gave your heart to someone, there's no taking that back. And I found that so, so true, and that's a theme, that's like the major theme of the series. And that theme kind of carries over to the next book in the series, which is Dirty Red. This one is told from the point of view of Caleb, who is the main character, Olivia in the first book, ex-boyfriend. It's told in the point of view of his girlfriend from the first book and how she felt about him forming a new relationship with his ex-girlfriend. So at first I was like, Olivia is a terrible character, but she is nowhere near as bad as Leah, who is the main character of this book. Leah is terrible. She is an awful person. Oh my god. So she was very, very, very unlikable. The things she does to Caleb, the things she does as a mother, she is a new mother in this book, and she sees her baby as a nuisance. She doesn't want to care for her baby. She doesn't want anything to do with her baby at all. She's just a terrible mother. She's a terrible person. She's a terrible partner to Caleb. The thing she does is just despicable. But the same thing happened with the opportunist. I found myself sympathizing with her after a while. And that was such a weird experience because you want to hate her so much, but you also really feel for her and what she's been through. And even now, I still want to hate her, but I just understand what she's been through. I understand her motives. She had done terrible things, but I can't help but still like her. It's just so weird. This is why I just love unlikable characters so much who you're supposed to hate, because you don't really hate them because the things they do are kind of valid. I gave Dirty Red 5 out of 5 stars. I liked it more than The Opportunist just because I found Leah such a more intriguing character based on the fact that she's such a terrible person, but you can't help but sympathize with her. If you like unlikable characters, I would recommend this series to you. If you like characters who are morally gray, who have done terrible things, but you can't help but still sympathize with them, like, pick up this series. It is really good. The next one I picked up is Forgiving Lies by Molly McAdams. This book is about a girl who had just been sexually assaulted by someone who she had known for years. So she had gone through something very, very, very traumatic. She meets this guy who just moved into the apartment right next to her, and she starts a friendship with them, and it obviously turns into a romance. What she doesn't know is that this guy is an undercover cop who is in her town on a mission to track down this guy who is a serial killer. And that's something that he keeps hidden from her for her protection, but she does not know that. The synopsis of this book seemed really interesting to me. I had never read a book about an undercover cop, and I thought reading about an undercover cop character would be super interesting, and it definitely was. And the fact that Rachel, the main character, didn't know that Cash, the love interest, was an undercover cop was super interesting because she kind of doesn't really actually know this guy. She thinks she knows him, but she actually doesn't, since he's keeping such a huge part of his life hidden from her. But he has to in order to protect her because he doesn't want any criminal that he is watching over to come after her because she is associated with him. The romance in this was super, super sweet. This is another example of kind of a hate to love romance. In the beginning of Cash and Rachel's relationship, they really bicker a lot, but they do come to understand each other more, and they start off just this sweet romance that I just really enjoyed. This is the first book in a series that I want to continue for sure. The series is classified as a romantic suspense, so there's a lot of thrilling stuff that happens in this book since Cash is an undercover cop, so he goes through a lot of things that have to do with criminals. So there is kind of a thriller aspect in this series, but it is still mostly a romance book and series. So I would recommend the first book. It was really, really good, and again, can't wait to continue on with this series. I gave Forgiving Lies 4 out of 5 stars. I finally got to The Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a spin-off book to the Lux series. This has been one of my most anticipated books of 2018, and I finally got to it in January. It was amazing. It definitely lived up to my expectations, thank God. So this book follows one of the side characters from the Lux series, and that is Luck. And it takes place 4 years after the events in Opposition took place. And in this book, we follow our main character, Evie, and she kind of gets involved with the alien shenanigans in this book. I love Luck and Evie together so much. They are so cute together, and more specifically, Luck. Oh my God, Luck. I love him so much. He is like 2 times better than Damon from the Lux series, who is the love interest in the Lux series. Luck is so much better. Oh my God. I don't remember the last time I had swooned for a male character so hard. I just love him so much. Luck is someone who is very sarcastic, very quirky, and can come across as really cruel sometimes. But deep down, he's just such a good guy. He's so funny. He has one of the most unique personalities I had ever read about. He's so likable. I did really like him in the Lux series, but he's even better in this book, seeing him all grown up, because in the Lux series, he was about 13 or 14, and in The Darkest Star, I think he's 18. So seeing like a more mature version of him was so interesting. I really like that. I will say that The Darkest Star feels like the first book in a series. This first book is mainly just a build-up for the rest of the series, which I don't mind. It kind of just gives you room to get to know the characters more, and which means there's a lot less action in this book, but the way this book sets up, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot that goes down in the rest of the books in this series that I cannot wait for. If you love the Lux series, if you are a die-hard fan of this series, you definitely need to pick up The Darkest Star. It is totally worth it. I loved it so much. So many plot twists in this book. Like, plot twist overload. There were so many twists in this book. Cannot wait for the next book to come out in October. It seems like so far away. I need it right now. But yeah, The Darkest Star did not disappoint. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And finally, the last book I'm going to talk about is On the Fence by Casey West. So On the Fence is about this girl who is a tomboy. She grew up with 3 older brothers who really had a big influence on her. Therefore, they really taught her pretty much how to be a boy. They taught her how to play sports, which really made her come off as less girly and more as like one of them, since she always hung out with the guys. So she ends up getting a speeding ticket, and because of that, her dad makes her get a job so that she can pay it off. So she gets a job at a boutique, and for a tomboy to get a job at a boutique, that has to be very rough. So she is really thrust into this world of just girly things through her job, which is something really different for her. And she also kind of starts to realize that she kind of has feelings for her childhood best friend, who is also a friend of the family, and she spends most of her nights talking to him between her fence, since he is her next door neighbor, and they kind of confide in each other about their problems, about their hardships, and it really brings them closer. This book was so cute. The romance and relationship that developed between Charlie, the main character, and Brayden was really beautiful. I think I've mentioned before, but the falling in love with your childhood best friend, I think is my favorite romance trope. I am just a sucker for that trope. And I think it's because the two characters already have such a strong bond already. And it's also because of the fact that they have been friends for so long that forming a relationship is kind of unthinkable, and it's something they don't want to venture in, but they still cannot fight their feelings for each other, and it just causes so much angst. And then when they finally get together, I'm just like, yes, because you guys already have such a strong bond. I'm just a sucker for that trope, and this book did that trope so well. I really felt for the romance in this book. I loved how these two characters really felt like they could open up to each other, and how they spent their nights in between the fence just confiding in each other, when during the day they didn't really open up that much. They never did. They just kept their late night talks as something that is like their own separate world, where they just really help each other out with their difficulties, which I thought was really sweet. Overall, this was a very fun, fluffy read that I would recommend. It is one of Casey West's earlier books, but it's still really well done, and I cannot wait to pick up more books by her. Finally need to get on that. And I gave On the Fence 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, finally, that is the end of this video. That was my January wrap up. Let me know in the comments what books you read in January. Which one was your favorite? I would love to know. And if you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos. And also be sure to follow me on Twitter, because I am posting a lot on there. And I will see you guys really soon. Bye!